I was found behind a diner in East Haven, Connecticut, wrapped in a stained towel placed in a cardboard box and left beside a dumpster like last night's leftovers. It was 3:17 a.m., January, cold enough to freeze your breath before it left your mouth. The cook taking out the trash heard something, said later it sounded like a kitten. When he pulled the box open and saw me, his knees buckled. He thought I was already gone, but I wasn't. I was 6 days old. No note, no ID. Just me, the cold, and a milk bottle that had rolled out onto the pavement. The nurses called me Baby Jane Doe until someone from Child Services showed up. I don't remember the hospital, or the flashing red and blue lights, but I do remember growing up knowing one thing. Someone had thrown me away. Most kids grow up asking, where did I come from? Me? I was asking, why wasn't I wanted? Foster homes came and went. Some were warm, most were not. There was always a strange silence when I walked into a new room, like everyone had been talking about me just before I arrived. The paperwork said I was abandoned. But in my dreams, it felt worse than that. It felt deliberate. It felt like punishment for something I didn't even know I'd done. One night, when I was 8, a girl at school asked me if I had a real family. I shrugged and said, they left me in a box. That's as real as it gets. She never spoke to me again. Sometimes I'd imagine them, my real parents, rich maybe, or famous, too young, too scared. Maybe they lit candles on my birthday from afar. Maybe they didn't remember me at all. But every time I tried to give them a face, it blurred. And eventually I stopped trying, because if I kept wondering who they were, I'd have to accept something even worse. They knew who I was, and they still left me behind. That's the part that stays with you. Not the night you were thrown away, the part where you realize no one ever came back to find you. The Thompsons were my first foster family. I was 5. They lived in a big blue house with a front porch swing and a golden retriever named Sandy. On the outside, they looked like the kind of people who belonged on a cereal box. But behind closed doors, things were colder than the night I was found. Mrs. Thompson made it clear I wasn't hers. She called me the girl, never by name. Mr. Thompson didn't talk much. He mostly drank. Their 2 boys ignored me, unless they were blaming something on me. Dinner was always last. I ate what was left. My clothes were old hand-me-downs that didn't fit. Every birthday passed without a candle, every Christmas without a name tag. I learned not to ask for anything, not because it wasn't allowed, but because I knew the answer. The only time I felt seen was at school. Ms. Delaney, my first-grade teacher, noticed I never brought lunch. One day she gave me half of hers. Turkey sandwich. No mustard. I cried. She didn't ask why, just packed me a lunch every day after that. I think she was the first person who saw me as a child and not a burden. When I was 7, I got moved again. No explanation. One day a caseworker showed up with a plastic bag and told me to pack. I didn't cry. I'd already learned that crying made the ride harder. The next home was worse, and the one after that even colder. By the time I turned 10, I'd lived in 6 different houses, each one chipped away at me like I was a statue being carved by strangers who didn't care what I became. One night I looked in the mirror and didn't recognize myself. My hair was uneven. My eyes were tired. My voice had learned to whisper. I remember thinking, if they don't want me, maybe I'm not supposed to be wanted. It's not that I believed I was trash. It's that I believed that's all anyone else ever saw when they looked at me. A thing someone else threw away. And no one wanted to pick up. The 7th home was different. Her name was Marlene. She had grey hair, a crooked smile, and a house that smelled like vanilla candles and old books. She wasn't married, no kids, just a garden full of lavender and a tabby cat named Dusty. When I arrived, she didn't ask questions. She just showed me the bathroom, a soft bed with purple sheets, and a nightlight shaped like the moon. I didn't trust her. I waited for the yelling, the late dinners, the rules made just for me, But they didn't come. Instead, she sat with me every night while I did homework. She taught me how to cook scrambled eggs. She let me paint a mural on the side of the shed, bad sunflowers and crooked stars. She laughed like it was a masterpiece. Marlene wasn't loud or emotional. She was steady. She was there. One day I got sick. Fever, chills. I expected her to be annoyed, but she made me tea, rubbed my back, and sat beside me for hours humming softly. I remember crying not from pain, but from the shock of being cared for. That was the first time I thought, maybe I could stay. And for almost a year I did. We planted tulips that spring. I got an A on a book report. She framed it. I made a friend at school. I stopped flinching when people said my name. Then, one afternoon, I came home and saw a car in the driveway. A woman in a blazer was sitting with Marlene at the kitchen table. A week later, I was packing again. Marlene hugged me tight and whispered, "If I could keep you, I would." That's when I learned. Not every goodbye means they stopped loving you. Sometimes love just isn't enough for the system to let you stay. And that broke something new in me, the kind of break you don't cry over, the kind that makes you quiet for years. Because once someone tries to love you and still loses you, a part of you believes that no one ever really will again. After Marlene, I stopped unpacking. Every time I entered a new foster home, I kept my clothes in the bag. Never hung anything up. I treated every bed like a hotel room, temporary, borrowed, someone else's. By the time I turned 12, I'd learned how to disappear in plain sight. Be quiet, be useful, don't ask questions. Most families liked that. They said I was well behaved. What they meant was, I didn't make trouble. Trouble was for kids who believed someone might actually care enough to fix it. At school, I made sure to get average grades. Good enough not to raise concern, not so good anyone noticed. I had one friend, a girl named Jessa, who liked to braid my hair and steal cafeteria milk cartons. She never asked why I moved so often. I loved her for that. One day she said, "You ever wonder what it would have been like if they'd kept you?" I didn't have to ask who they were. I just shook my head and said, "Not anymore." But that was a lie. Because some nights when the house was quiet and the foster parents were asleep, I'd go to the bathroom, turn the faucet on to muffle any sound, and cry until my face burned. Not because I missed them, but because I knew they remembered me. You don't just forget putting a baby in a box. You don't just forget throwing someone away. And I wondered, if they knew where I was, if they saw me older now, walking home from school or eating alone in the cafeteria, would they stop? Would they know? Would they care? The answer always felt the same. A heavy silence, like an echo that never comes back. So I stopped hoping. Because hope is dangerous for people like me. Hope makes you hesitate. Hope makes you wait at doors that no one's going to open. Hope is what gets you left behind all over again. And after a while, even the most broken hearts learn how to stay closed. By the time I turned 15, I'd mastered the art of staying invisible. I spoke only when spoken to. I learned how to make dinner from boxed mac and cheese and how to fold laundry so neat it looked military. I did what I had to do because doing anything more just made people notice you. And noticing led to questions. And questions, those were dangerous. One day, my current foster mom, Nancy, asked me if I ever thought about my birth family. I froze. I could feel the spoon in my cereal bowl trembling, milk rippling like a warning. I shrugged. "No," I said. But the truth? They were always in my head. Shadows, outlines, half-drawn sketches. I imagined a tall woman with green eyes, a man with broad shoulders and a nervous smile. I gave them names sometimes, depending on the week. Some days they were teenagers who panicked. Other days criminals, or addicts, or monsters. But no matter the version, they always left me. I hated that I still wanted to know them. Nancy handed me a folded paper. "I got this from your file," she said. "You're old enough to see it now." It was a case report, faded, dated the night I was found. Infant female, Estimated 6 days old. Discovered behind a restaurant dumpster. No note. Umbilical cord clipped with household scissors. I stared at it for hours. Not because it said anything new, but because it was real. Cold. Documented. I wasn't a mystery. I was a statistic. A number in a system that didn't even blink when babies got thrown away. Later that night, I snuck out to the porch with a flashlight and reread it again. Then again. And something cracked. Not from sadness, from rage. Because for the first time in my life, I didn't just want answers. I wanted justice. I wanted to look them in the eyes and say, "You didn't break me." And more than anything, I wanted them to know. I survived. It started with a Google search. At first, I didn't expect anything. Just typing "baby found East Haven dumpster 2003" felt ridiculous. But there it was, an old news article from January 7th, 2003. Unidentified newborn found behind local diner. Police seek information. The photo was grainy, black and white. But the box? The towel? The exact alley behind the diner? It was real. It was me. I printed the article and stared at it for hours. I couldn't stop shaking. The article mentioned a few things I hadn't known, like the fact that someone had seen a car speeding away that night, or that the milk bottle had fingerprints, but they were smudged and couldn't be matched. A name popped up too. Officer Michael Darby. He'd been the one who responded first. I wrote it down. I didn't sleep much that week. Every second I wasn't at school, I was researching, scouring archived newspaper pages, scrolling through public records, trying every combination of words that might crack the story open. The next week, I found a message board. A post from a woman in 2004 who claimed she knew someone who left a baby behind a diner once. She'd posted under a fake name, but she mentioned details that weren't in the article, like the towel being floral and the baby being a girl. My stomach flipped. Who was she? Was she bluffing? Or had someone confessed to her? I copied the post and started searching for more. That night, I created an email account with a name no one would recognize and replied to the post, even though it was over a decade old. Then I reached out to the East Haven Police Department. I asked if Officer Darby was still alive. The receptionist paused, then said, "Yes. Retired now. Why do you ask?" I swallowed hard. Because I'm the girl they found that night. And just like that, the silence broke, and the search became real. Officer Darby agreed to meet me at a diner. Not the same one I was found behind, but close enough to make my skin crawl. He looked older than I expected. Grey hair, thick glasses, hands that trembled slightly when he reached for his coffee. But when I told him who I was, he didn't blink. "I figured this day would come," he said. He remembered everything. The call, the cold, the towel with faded daisies, the milk bottle. He even remembered the cook's name, Tony, who cried while they waited for the ambulance. Darby pulled out a thin manila folder. "I kept copies," he said. "Probably not supposed to, but it stuck with me." Inside were black and white photos. The alley, the box, a tiny blurred baby wrapped in a towel. Me. I felt like I couldn't breathe. Then he handed me something I'd never seen before. A note, half burned, water damaged, written in blue ink. "She deserves better. Please don't look for me. I stared at it like it might explode. A note. There had been a note. Darby said it was found near the trash bin, tucked into a crack in the brick. Fire damage had nearly erased it and no prints were on it. But he never forgot that single shaky sentence. She deserves better. Better than what? A family? A life? A chance? Or was that just guilt written down on a scrap of paper left to rot? I left the diner shaking, the photocopy of the note folded tightly in my hand. M. One letter, 1,000 questions. That night I laid awake, replaying the words in my head over and over until they didn't sound like words anymore. She deserves better. If that was true, why leave me in the cold? Why hide? What kind of person believes abandoning a baby in the dark is mercy? And what kind of person writes a goodbye that isn't meant to be answered? I didn't know yet who M was, but I knew I'd spend every breath left in me trying to find out. For weeks, I couldn't focus on anything else. School became a blur. I skipped lunch to search old web archives and message boards. I borrowed books on handwriting analysis, adoption law, anything remotely connected to what I was chasing. Every M I met in real life made my heart beat faster. Every time I passed someone with dark hair and tired eyes, I wondered if they recognized me and chose to look away. Nancy noticed the change. One night she sat down on my bed, holding the note Officer Darby had given me. "You think she's still out there?" she asked gently. "I know she is." Nancy didn't try to talk me out of it. She just nodded and asked the one question I hadn't let myself ask. "What will you do if you find her?" I didn't answer, because the truth was, I didn't know. Did I want an apology, an explanation, a fight? Or did I just want to see her face and know that she was real? One afternoon, while scanning old social media threads, I found it. A profile from years ago belonging to a woman named Monica, from East Haven, who once posted about losing someone too soon. I clicked it, scrolled. In one photo, she looked young, barely out of high school, holding a baby bump. In the next, she was in scrubs. Then silence for years. But one post stood out. It was from 2003. A blurry picture of a tiny floral towel. The caption read, "I never deserved her." My hands went numb. Was this it? Was Monica M? I sent a message. "I think we need to talk. I think you know who I am." And then I waited. Minutes. Hours. A full day. Then the reply came. Just one word. "Come." She included an address. A small town 1 state over. And suddenly, the girl who had once been left behind was going back to where it all began. The town was smaller than I expected. One blinking stoplight, a gas station with a faded awning, kids on bikes without helmets. And there, just past a crooked mailbox and an overgrown hedge, was the house. White siding, chipped porch paint, a wind chime made of old spoons. I stood at the bottom of the steps for a long time. My hands were sweating. My heart felt like it was knocking harder than I ever could. Then the door opened. She looked older than her photos, but her eyes were the same, wide, nervous, searching. "Monica?" I asked. She nodded. Neither of us moved. Then she stepped aside and said, "You'd better come in." The living room smelled like lavender and something baking, banana bread maybe. There were photos on the mantel, none of babies, just her, alone, in different seasons, sometimes smiling. Mostly not. We sat at a small kitchen table. She poured tea with shaking hands. I didn't touch mine. Finally, she said, "You look just like your father." It was the first time I'd ever heard those words. "My father?" I asked. She nodded. "His name was Aaron." We were 17. He wasn't ready. I wasn't either. I could barely breathe. She took a deep breath. He left. I thought I could handle it. But I was alone. My parents kicked me out. I was sleeping on a friend's couch when I had you. No hospital, no birth certificate, just me and a pair of scissors. My stomach turned. I didn't know what else to do. I told myself someone else would give you a better life, that I was doing the right thing. She looked at me then, and her voice cracked. "I never stopped thinking about you." I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat there, letting her words crash around me like waves, and for the first time I realized the truth. The person who threw me away had also been a child who ran out of time, a child who believed she was saving mine. I stayed for 3 hours. She answered every question I could think of, some slowly, some like they'd been trapped in her throat for years. No, she never told anyone else. No, she never tried to find me later. Yes, she thought about it every day. Yes, she hated herself for it. At one point, she reached for my hand. I didn't pull away, but I didn't squeeze back either. I wasn't there to comfort her. I wasn't there to forgive. But I also wasn't there to destroy her. I just wanted the truth. All of it. No filters, no excuses. So she gave it. She showed me a box of things she'd kept, hidden under her bed for 18 years. A hospital bracelet she wore when she went into false labor. A photo of her and Aaron at a school dance. A baby sock. A dried flower she'd picked from the park the week she gave birth. And the second half of the note. She deserves better. Please don't look for me. M. Below that, in faded black ink, something had been scribbled out. But you could still make out the beginning of a name. Mon. I stared at it for a long time. That night, back in my room at Nancy's, I laid everything out on the floor. The articles, the case file, the burned note, the bracelet, the sock, pieces of a puzzle that never should have existed. I still didn't know how to feel. Relief, rage, closure. Maybe all of it. Maybe none. I tried to sleep but couldn't. My mind replayed every word Monica had said, dissecting the tone, the pauses, the regret. Then, at 3:12 a.m., my phone buzzed. A message, from an account I didn't recognize. Just 4 words. I think I'm your sister. I blinked at the screen. No profile photo, no context. But my hands started to shake. Because just like that, the story cracked open again. And the girl who thought she was alone in the world had just learned she wasn't. I didn't respond right away. The message haunted me all day. I reread it over and over, checked the accounts page, found nothing. No posts, no pictures, just a name. Maya D., I told Nancy. She raised her eyebrows. Could be fake, she warned, or it could be real. I wasn't ready to hope again, but I also couldn't let it go. That night, I finally messaged back. Why do you think that? The reply came 10 minutes later. My mum's name is Monica. She used to live in East Haven. I found something in her closet a few weeks ago. A photo of her pregnant, with a name scribbled on the back. Eliza. That was my name, my foster name. But Monica never should have known it, unless she had come looking after all. I asked for proof. Maya sent a blurry picture of the photo. And another, of a letter. Old, folded, tear-stained, written in the same shaky handwriting as the note Darby gave me. To my second daughter, if you ever find this, I hope you never hate me. Second daughter, it hit me like a truck. Maya was younger than me by 2 years. That meant Monica got pregnant again, after abandoning me. And this time, she kept the baby, or tried to. Maya explained she'd been raised by her grandmother. Monica had been in and out of her life. Too unstable to raise a cat, let alone a kid, Maya said. But one day while cleaning out the attic, Maya found the letter and the name. And just like me, she went searching. I stared at her messages, my thoughts tangled. I should have felt angry, betrayed. But all I felt was quiet, because for the first time, I wasn't the only one asking these questions. I wasn't the only one Monica left behind, and that changed everything. Maya wasn't just a sister. She was a mirror, cracked differently but from the same storm. And maybe, just maybe, we could start to rebuild. Together. We met 2 weeks later. A train ride, a long walk, and there she was, standing outside a bookstore with a denim jacket and nervous eyes. Maya. She smiled like she wasn't sure if she was allowed to. So did I. The first hour was awkward. We sat in a park eating melted popsicles and pretending this was normal. 2 strangers with matching chins and shared ghosts. Then, slowly, we started to talk. We swapped stories, foster homes, favourite teachers, scars. I told her about the towel, the box, the note. She told me about the screaming matches, the holes Monica punched in the walls, the nights her grandmother held her close while Monica disappeared for days. I always thought I was the broken one, she said. I looked at her. You're not. Neither are you, she replied. And for the first time, I believed it. We didn't talk much about Monica that day. It was too fresh. too hard. But before we left, Maya said something I'll never forget. She never told me about you. Never. But sometimes when she thought I was asleep, she'd say your name. Just once. Real soft. I nodded, unsure whether to feel warm or cold inside. I think she wanted to tell me, she added, but she couldn't face it. Maybe she didn't know how. Maybe shame is its own kind of prison. We promised to keep in touch. And we did. Over the next few weeks, we messaged constantly. Photos, stories, little pieces of each other. I still wasn't sure what to call her, sister, friend, stranger. But it didn't matter. For the first time in my life, I had someone who didn't ask me to explain where I came from, because she came from the same place. And somehow, that made all the difference. We weren't just survivors anymore. We were a beginning. And beginnings are rare for people like us. Weeks turned into months. Maya and I became each other's constants. Late-night texts, birthday reminders, shared playlists. We weren't trying to fill the hole Monica left, just trying to understand it together. But understanding brought new questions, like, who was our father? Aaron. Monica hadn't said much, just that he left before I was born. But I needed more than that. So Maya and I dug. Public records, yearbooks, property databases, social media. We searched every Aaron born in 1985 who had once lived in Connecticut, and eventually we narrowed it down to one. Aaron Chase. The yearbook photo showed a lanky kid with kind eyes and crooked teeth. An old Facebook profile showed him in a military uniform. Then a wedding photo. 3 kids. He had a whole life. I stared at the screen, heart pounding. This man was my father. He didn't know I existed. But I was made from his blood and shadow. Maya didn't push. You don't have to reach out, she said. Knowing might be enough. But it wasn't. I found an address. I wrote a letter. A long one. I didn't send it. Instead, I drove to the address one afternoon and just sat across the street, engine running. A boy rode a bike up the driveway. A girl watered flowers near the steps. Then the door opened, and he stepped out. Aaron, older, weathered, smiling. He waved to the kids and laughed at something the girl said. It was a soft laugh, gentle, warm. I didn't get out of the car. I just watched. Because that moment answered everything. He'd made a choice, a life. And somewhere in that life I was a fracture sealed over. I didn't hate him. I didn't feel anything at all. Just distance. And sometimes that's all the closure you get. Closure isn't always a door slamming. Sometimes it's knowing which door not to knock on. Maya and I decided to do something bold. We planned a trip, just the 2 of us. A weekend away at a lake town up north where no one knew our names. We weren't running from anything, we just wanted to breathe. The cabin was small with creaky floorboards and a screened porch that overlooked the water. There were no distractions, no phones, just us, a deck of cards, and the sound of wind through trees. That first night we sat on the dock under the stars, feet dangling above the black water. I used to dream about you, Maya said. Before I knew you existed. I turned to her. What did you dream? That I had a sister, and that she came to get me. My throat tightened. I used to imagine a mother who wanted me, I whispered. I used to picture her with long hair and sad eyes. I never imagined she'd be real. We sat in silence, letting the honesty settle between us like fog. Later, we burned a small fire and wrote letters we'd never send. To Monica, to Aaron, to the versions of ourselves we used to be. Maya read hers aloud. You should have tried harder, she said, her voice shaking. You should have been better. Then she threw the paper into the flames. I read mine quietly. No anger, just truth. I needed you. You weren't there. I survived anyway. The fire crackled and ate the words. We didn't cry. We just watched until everything turned to ash. That weekend didn't fix us, but it reminded us that we weren't broken. Not forever. Just bent. And maybe, just maybe, bent things can still hold light. The stars were out in full when we finally went inside. I slept better that night than I had in years. In the morning, the lake reflected the sky so clearly it looked like a second world, one where we hadn't been forgotten, just misplaced. And somehow that was enough. Back home, something had shifted. Nancy noticed it first. "You smile more," she said, "like something let go." She wasn't wrong. It wasn't that the pain disappeared. It had just rearranged itself, like an old scar you stopped noticing. Still there. Still tender, but no longer the loudest thing in the room. I started organizing my things, tossing out what no longer served me. Old receipts, clothes that didn't fit. Even the box Monica gave me. I didn't throw it out, but I packed it away. Out of sight, out of power. One afternoon, while going through my closet, I found the trash bag. Black, thick, untied. It wasn't the same one, obviously. But for a moment I froze. All I could see was that alley, that night, that first breath of cold air. I sat down on the floor and let the memory come. Not to punish myself, but to honor the girl I used to be. The one who cried in silence. The one who waited for someone who never showed. The one who, even after all that, kept going. And in that moment, I whispered to her. I found them. Not to boast, but to offer peace, because that girl had been lost. But I wasn't anymore. I called Maya that night. "I think I'm ready to visit the place," I said. "You sure?" she asked. I was. The next weekend, we drove 3 hours to a town neither of us remembered. The diner was gone, replaced by a laundromat, but the alley was still there. We stood together where it happened. No candles, no ceremony, just two women standing in the shadow of what they survived. Maya reached for my hand. I took it. We didn't speak. We didn't have to, because we weren't just survivors anymore. We were proof that even the most forgotten stories can still be rewritten. And sometimes what was meant to end in silence becomes the beginning of a voice that remembers, a voice that refuses to disappear. And now it was finally mine. After the trip, I felt something strange. Peace. Not the kind you read about in books where everything wraps up neatly with a bow. No, this peace was quiet, rugged, earned. I enrolled in a writing class at the community centre. Something small, something just for me. I didn't tell Maya at first. I didn't tell Nancy either. I wanted it to be mine. Our first assignment was to write a personal essay. I stared at the blank page for an hour before writing the first sentence. I was born in the shadows of someone else's fear. The words poured out after that, all 20 years of it. The note, the trash, Monica, Aaron, Maya, the fire, the silence. My professor pulled me aside after class. "You ever thought about publishing?" she asked. I laughed. "That wasn't a story. That was just my life." She looked at me dead serious. "Then you have one hell of a life." Maya read it first, then Nancy. Then a woman from class who said, "You put into words what I've never been able to say out loud." I cried that night. Not out of pain, but out of release. I wasn't invisible anymore. I was heard. Months passed. The story spread. Someone shared it on a blog, then another. A small publisher reached out. "We'd love to work with you," they said. Me, the girl in the trash. The voice no one thought worth listening to. Now, people were asking me what happened next. I told them the truth. I don't know yet, but I'm here. And sometimes, being here is the bravest ending of all. Or maybe it's the beginning, because I've stopped hiding, and I've started telling, and that changes everything. For the first time, I didn't feel like someone's abandoned past. I felt like someone's living proof. And I was just getting started. The book deal wasn't big. It didn't come with flashing lights or talk shows or any of that, but it was real. And it was mine. I signed the contract in Nancy's kitchen. She cried more than I did. The first draft was messy, raw. I stayed up nights rereading pages, second-guessing everything, but Maya kept reminding me, Don't edit the hurt out. So I didn't. I wrote about the pain, the abandonment, the questions. I wrote about the day I met Maya, and the lake, and the dock, and the fire that ate our letters. I wrote about standing in that alley again, and when it was done, I felt something I hadn't expected: grief. As if telling the story had forced me to let go of a version of myself I'd been carrying for years. The forgotten girl, the voiceless shadow, the one nobody came back for. She deserved a goodbye, so Maya and I planned one. We returned to the lake cabin, same time of year. The air was colder now, sharper. We built a small raft from driftwood and twine, placed on it a printout of the book's dedication. For the girl they threw away, and the woman she became. We lit a candle, pushed the raft into the water, watched it float into the dark. Maya stood beside me, her arm around my shoulder. She'd be proud of you, she whispered. I smiled through tears. She is me. The raft flickered, then faded. We stood there long after the flame went out, not because we were lost, but because we'd finally been found. The next morning, I opened my email to a message from a high school in Ohio. A teacher had read an early excerpt. She wanted me to speak, not as a warning, as a writer. And I said yes. I was no longer just the product of what had been done to me. I was the architect of what came next. The auditorium smelled like old wood and floor polish. Students filed in, yawning, whispering, dragging backpacks behind them. I stood at the podium, clutching my notes like a lifeline. I wasn't nervous, I was terrified. Then I looked up and saw her. A girl in the front row, hoodie pulled over her head, eyes guarded and tired. She looked like me. Not exactly, but enough. And I knew. This was why I came. The teacher introduced me. I stepped forward. I was left behind a diner, I began, wrapped in a towel. That's how my story starts. Heads turned, phones lowered. Silence grew thick. But that's not where it ends, I said. I told them about the box, the note, the search, Maya. I didn't sugarcoat it. I didn't dramatize either. Just truth plain and worn. When I finished, there was a beat of quiet. Then someone clapped. Then more. Afterward, that same girl from the front row came up to me. My mum left last year, she said. My dad. He's not around much. I've been couch hopping. I didn't offer advice. I just listened. You made it, she said softly. So will you, I told her. You already are. Back home, Maya called. She'd gotten a job offer, youth counselor at a shelter in Boston. I think I'm ready to give back, she said. I smiled. Of course you are. That night I took out the box one last time. I opened it. The note was still there. Faded. Fragile. I folded it carefully and slipped it into the first copy of my book. Not as a wound, but as proof. That beginnings don't always look like beginnings. Sometimes they look like endings. Sometimes they look like a trash bag in an alley. But they are still beginnings. And we get to decide where they go. Always. And I decided mine wouldn't end in silence. Maya moved to Boston that spring. We didn't see each other as often, but the bond didn't weaken. If anything, it deepened. We sent voice notes, late-night texts, photos of stray cats, and bad coffee. She told me about the kids at the shelter. They're raw, she said once, but they remind me of us. Meanwhile, I kept writing. Essays, blog posts, eventually another book, this time fiction. But of course it wasn't. The protagonist was a girl found in a trash bag. Only in this version, she had wings. Broken at first, but wings nonetheless. The story was about flight, about not asking for permission to exist. It resonated. People wrote to say, I see myself in her, and I knew I'd done something right. One day, a letter arrived. Not an email, a real letter. The handwriting was shaky, the return address unfamiliar. I opened it slowly, expecting a reader. It was from Monica. Just a single page. I saw your book. I didn't expect to. I didn't think you'd keep the note. I don't know what to say, but I hope you're okay. There was no apology, no explanation, just a fragment. And for once, I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel anything. I folded the letter and placed it in a drawer, not out of forgiveness, out of closure. Because not all stories have neat endings. Some just stop, and that's okay. The next morning, I took a walk around my neighborhood. Kids rode bikes. A woman watered her porch plants. Somewhere wind chimes danced. I was here, still here, alive, known, and whole. Not because of what I'd lost, but because of what I chose to build. Me. All of me. From nothing. From trash. From truth. And I kept walking, toward whatever came next, with my story in my pocket and my voice finally my own. The day my second book launched, I visited the alley. Not to mourn, but to thank it. I stood at the place where my life had once been discarded and placed a small stone on the ground. It had one word carved into it: risen. A woman walked by, saw me kneeling, and smiled. She didn't know me, didn't ask. But something in her gaze said she understood. Back home, I opened a blank journal, not a laptop, not a Word doc, just paper. And I began to write the next thing. No plan, no outline, just a whisper. There was once a girl who was forgotten, and that was enough. The book tour took me through towns I'd never heard of. Libraries, school gyms, church basements. People lined up not for my autograph, but to share their own stories. One man said, "I was left on a doorstep. I never told anyone." A woman whispered, "Your words helped me forgive someone who never apologized." And I realized something. I wasn't special because I'd survived. I was special because I chose not to stay silent. Because survival is the start, not the end. One evening in a small Vermont town, a girl about 16 stood up during Q&A. "What would you tell the version of you in the trash?" she asked. The room fell still. I didn't rush. I breathed. Then I said, "I'd tell her she's going to be okay, that this isn't the end, that she'll find sisters' voices meaning, that one day the world will listen, and she'll know she never needed to scream to be heard." The girl nodded. And I saw it again. That spark. Recognition. Hope. I don't know what she'll do with it, but I know what I did. I lived. Louder than they expected, softer than they deserved, and always, always, on my own terms. And that, after everything, was the real beginning.